Have you ever stumbled upon a secret your loved one kept hidden for years? This story begins with a promise made on a hospital bed, a promise I thought I'd never break. Yet curiosity and grief can lead us to unexpected places. One quiet morning, holding a mysterious key in my hand, I opened the door to a life I never knew my husband had built. What I discovered changed everything I believed about him, about us. To protect their privacy, I've changed the names and locations in this story. Please listen closely and follow along, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, do it now so you won't miss the next story. Tap like and leave a comment saying I'm listening so we can stay connected and share these journeys together. The fluorescent lights in room 314 of Stanford Medical Center hummed softly, a low, steady sound that blended with the faint beeping of Robert Lawson's heart monitor. Outside the window, the California sun dipped behind eucalyptus trees, casting long stripes of gold across the white hospital sheets. Robert, once a vigorous 59-year-old contractor with hands as steady as stone, now lay frail and pale, his breathing shallow. Emma sat at his bedside, fingers entwined with his. She was 54, a literature professor at a community college in San Jose, her dark hair pulled back in a messy bun from too many nights spent at the hospital. Robert squeezed her hand weakly. His eyes, still sharp blue despite the illness, locked on hers. Emma, he whispered, his voice a rasp. Don't ever go up to the mountain property I bought in Sierra Nevada. Promise me. Not now, not later. Just don't. His grip trembled. Promise me, Em. Tears blurred her vision. She brushed his forehead with trembling fingers, nodding. I promise, Robert. If that's what you want. She tried to sound calm, but her voice cracked. Good, he murmured, his eyelids fluttering. Good. He closed his eyes, exhaling as if the secret weighed heavier than his illness. The promise hung between them like a sealed envelope. In the months after his funeral, a small, quiet service at a chapel in Palo Alto, Emma lived in a haze of lectures, grading papers, and empty evenings at the bungalow they had shared. 10 years of marriage had folded into memory with cruel swiftness. Then one gray morning, a knock came at her door. Standing there was Mr. Douglas, Robert's longtime attorney, his raincoat damp from a February drizzle. Mrs. Lawson, he said gently, Robert left some items for you. At her kitchen table, over mugs of coffee gone cold, he placed a small, walnut-colored box in front of her. Its hinges squeaked as she opened it. Inside lay a silver key, heavy and cool in her palm, attached to a keyring shaped like a stag's head. Alongside it was a sealed brown envelope with Emma written in Robert's familiar blocky handwriting. Her throat tightened. She turned the key over in her hand, feeling the engraved ridges. What door does this open? She murmured aloud without realizing it. Mr. Douglas gave a small, careful smile. That, Mrs. Lawson, is for you to discover. Robert's instructions were very specific. Alone after he left, Emma held the key under the kitchen light, its metal gleaming like a challenge. The promise she'd made in that sterile hospital room warred with the rising tide of curiosity. She pressed the envelope to her chest, whispering, Robert, what did you do? The kitchen clock ticked on, loud in the silence, as if counting down to the moment she would decide to turn that key. The silver key lay heavy in Emma's palm as she drove north on Interstate 80, her old Subaru humming steadily beneath her. It was a crisp October morning, the kind that smelled faintly of pine and distant wood smoke. Beside her on the passenger seat sat the brown envelope Robert had left, still sealed, the edges soft from her thumb brushing it over and over. She'd waited 3 months after the funeral before opening it. Now, with the letter's words still echoing in her head, she was following its instructions, a mixture of dread and curiosity pressing at her chest. According to Mr. Douglas, Robert had quietly purchased a property called Sierra Vista 5 years earlier, a rustic estate tucked into the foothills near Grass Valley, California. Emma remembered how Robert would change the subject whenever his childhood in Sacramento came up, as though the past were a room he'd locked long ago. Why did you never tell me about this place? She muttered to herself, tightening her grip on the steering wheel. When she finally pulled off the highway onto a winding 2-lane road lined with towering cedars, her phone lost signal. A wooden sign, barely legible, read Sierra Vista, Private Drive. The keyring's tiny silver stag glinted in the sunlight as she held it up. "Well, here we are," she whispered. Mr. Douglas had explained over coffee in his downtown Sacramento office that the property's value had skyrocketed thanks to the planned Sierra Heights resort development nearby. "Robert wanted you to see it for yourself before you made any decisions," the lawyer had said, sliding the envelope across his desk. His tone had been formal but kind, the way someone speaks when they're guarding another person's secret. Now Emma parked beside a weathered stone gate. Beyond it, an old but stately two-story house rose from the slope, its wraparound porch sagging slightly but still elegant. A rusted wind chime tinkled in the breeze. She stepped out, the cold air biting her cheeks. She broke the envelope's seal at last. Inside was a letter in Robert's unmistakable handwriting. "Emma," it began, "if you're reading this, I'm gone. I bought Sierra Vista because it was the one piece of my past I couldn't let go of. Please go there once before deciding its future. There's a laptop in the living room. Password, the date we met." Her heart clenched. She whispered the date to herself, remembering the rainy afternoon at Moe's Books in Berkeley when Robert had first spoken to her, handing her a copy of Frost's poems. She folded the letter carefully, pressing it to her lips. The key turned smoothly in the old lock. As the door swung open, the scent of cedar and something faintly floral drifted out. Emma stepped inside, shivering. For the first time in their marriage, she was crossing a threshold into a part of Robert's life he had never shared. The next week, Emma sat in Mr. Douglas's office on J Street in Sacramento, a mug of black coffee cooling between her palms. The smell of old books and leather-bound case files filled the room. "Mrs. Lawson," the lawyer said gently, folding his hands on the desk, "before you make any decisions about Sierra Vista, there's something you should know. Robert's family may contest the property." Emma blinked at him, startled. "Contest it? On what grounds?" Douglas adjusted his glasses. "Thomas Lawson, Robert's older brother, believes your husband was not of sound mind when you purchased Sierra Vista. He has hinted at legal action." The words hit her like a sudden gust. She leaned back, fingers tightening around the mug. "That's absurd," she said quietly, then louder, firmer. "Robert was always clear-headed. Always. Even when he was sick." The lawyer nodded. "I've told him the same, but with the property's value increasing due to the Sierra Heights resort project, I expect they'll push harder." Later that afternoon, driving her aging Subaru up the mountain roads toward Grass Valley, Emma replayed the conversation in her head. The curves of the Sierra foothills rolled out before her, green pines against pale granite. Her knuckles whitened on the steering wheel as she whispered to herself, "Not of sound mind? He planned every detail. He planned me being here." The road narrowed to a private lane, the air cooler, scented with cedar and damp earth. At a bend in the road she pulled over, stepping out to stretch her legs. The silence of the forest pressed around her, broken only by a distant woodpecker and the rustle of leaves. She thought of Thomas Lawson, 62 and still living in Sacramento, a man who had rarely visited them but now suddenly claimed concern for Robert's mental state. "You never cared about him when he was alive," she muttered bitterly. When the house finally came into view she gasped. Sierra Vista wasn't a cabin or a crumbling relic of someone's youth. It was a sprawling wooden and stone estate perched on a hillside, its windows catching the afternoon light. Terraced gardens of maples and ferns tumbled down toward a small pond, everything meticulously tended. Nothing here spoke of the lonely, bruised boy Robert had hinted at. This was a man's deliberate creation, a sanctuary. Emma killed the engine and sat for a moment, staring. Her heart thudded. She could almost hear Robert's voice teasing her, "Well, Em, now you see it." She got out, the gravel crunching under her boots. The silver key felt cool and heavy in her pocket. "Okay," she breathed, "let's do this." At the door she hesitated, palm on the weathered wood. Her stomach nodded, fear, anticipation, and something like awe. "Robert," she whispered, "what were you hiding from me? Then, with a decisive twist, she slid the key into the lock. The door opened with a low creak, and Emma stepped into the hidden world her husband had left behind. Emma pushed the heavy oak door open with both hands and stepped into a space that made her breath catch. The first thing she noticed was the air, warm and faintly sweet, like cedar mixed with lavender. Afternoon light streamed in through tall windows, casting golden rectangles on a polished hardwood floor. The living room was nothing like she'd imagined. The ceiling soared high above her, beams of dark pine crisscrossing overhead, and at the far end a massive marble fireplace rose almost to the rafters. She could picture Robert standing there, hands behind his back, surveying the room in quiet satisfaction. Along the walls hung hundreds of framed paintings of the Sierra Nevada, rugged peaks at dawn, lakes shrouded in mist, wildflowers pushing through snow. Emma's eyes stung. She recognized the scenes. They were the same landscapes she'd dragged Robert to on their weekend hikes, the places she'd always lingered with her camera while he teased her for getting lost in the view. "Oh, Robert," she whispered, running a finger along one of the frames. On a small walnut table by the bay window sat a closed laptop and a cream-colored card propped against it. She picked it up. In Robert's neat, slanting handwriting it read, "For Emma, start here." Her throat tightened. He built this for her, not just a house, but a sanctuary. She sank into a leather armchair, tracing the letters on the card, feeling both cherished and unsettled. A sudden crunch of tires on gravel snapped her out of it. She froze. The sound grew louder, a car pulling up outside. Through the window she glimpsed a flash of movement. Heart hammering, she set the card back down and hurried to the door. Peering out between the curtains, she saw a dark SUV idling by the gate. 3 men stepped out, dressed in jeans and heavy jackets. They moved with a purpose that made her stomach clench. She didn't recognize their faces, but there was something vaguely familiar about the slope of one man's shoulders, the way he looked around. Emma quickly shut the curtain and backed away, her pulse racing. She whispered to herself, "Who are you? Why now?" She thought of Thomas, of the lawyer's warnings. Her gaze darted back to the laptop. It felt suddenly like a lifeline, a clue Robert had left. She grabbed it, clutching it to her chest like a shield, then sat back down, trying to slow her breathing. The living room felt both like a refuge and a stage. Somewhere behind one of the paneled walls, she noticed, was a narrow door slightly ajar, almost hidden in the woodwork. A draft of cool air brushed her ankle. "Another room?" she murmured. The men outside were still at the gate. Emma pressed her palm flat against the laptop lid, willing her hands to stop shaking. Whatever Robert had hidden here, in the house, in the computer, behind that secret door, she would have to uncover it quickly, before whoever was outside decided to come in. Emma sat cross-legged on the leather armchair, the laptop balanced on her knees. Outside, the crunch of gravel from the mysterious SUV had faded, but her pulse still raced. The cream-colored card Robert had left sat on the table like a whisper of his presence. She took a deep breath, opened the lid, and typed in the password, the date of their first meeting. Her fingers trembled as she pressed enter. The screen flickered and then filled with rows of video thumbnails, dozens, maybe hundreds, each labeled by date. Her heart lurched. "Oh my God, Robert, what did you do?" she murmured, reaching to click the first file. The video opened to show Robert sitting on a wooden bench she didn't recognize, sunlight slanting across his face. He looked strong, healthy, his hair still dark at the temples. When he spoke, his voice was warm and calm. "Hi, Emma. If you're watching this, I'm not there to explain everything myself. I'm sorry for that." He paused, almost as if he could see her on the other side of the screen. "I bought Sierra Vista because it was the only piece of my past I wanted to reclaim and make beautiful again. And because I wanted you to have a place that was yours, not a hospital room, not a classroom, but a sanctuary." Emma's eyes blurred. She touched the screen, tracing the outline of his face. "You idiot," she whispered, half laughing, half sobbing. Robert's smile dimmed. "I was diagnosed with severe coronary artery disease 3 years ago. I didn't want our last years together to be about tests and pills and waiting rooms. I wanted you to have memories of hikes, dinners, plans, not hospitals. That's why I kept it quiet." Emma let out a shaky breath. Anger and grief rose together. "Why didn't you tell me?" she said aloud to the empty room. The video continued. Robert stood, turning the camera to show a sweeping view of the house and its grounds. He pointed out the greenhouse, the library, even a hidden garden path lined with stone lanterns. "I've set up everything for you here," he said softly. "The passwords, the papers, the caretakers. This is your place now. Please, take your time before deciding what to do with it." She clicked another video. This one showed Robert kneeling in a garden bed, dirt on his hands, explaining how to care for the Japanese maples he'd planted. Another clip showed him in the kitchen, labeling drawers, leaving notes taped to the inside of cabinet doors. Each recording was like a breadcrumb trail, not just of instructions but of his love and foresight. Emma pressed the pause button, wiping her face with her sleeve. The laptop felt warm against her legs, almost alive. For the first time since his death, she felt she was having a conversation with him, not about taxes or groceries, but about his soul. Outside, a branch snapped. The men were still there. But inside, surrounded by Robert's voice and images, Emma felt a strange, steady calm. She whispered, "Okay, Robert. Show me everything." Then she clicked on the next video. The following Thursday morning, the mountain air was sharp and cold, drifting in through the cracked window of the living room where Emma sat with Robert's laptop open on the coffee table. She had spent the night watching his videos until her eyes burned. Each clip had made her feel both stronger and more fragile at once. She was pouring herself a second cup of coffee from the small French press when the sound of tires on gravel reached her ears. Emma stiffened. She set the mug down, wiping her hands on her jeans. Through the lace curtain she saw a black SUV rolling up the drive, dust swirling behind it. 3 men got out, their jackets zipped to the chin against the wind. Even from a distance she recognized the eldest, Thomas Lawson, 62, Robert's older brother, the man she'd spoken to only at funerals and the occasional Christmas call. Behind him were 2 younger men she didn't know, though their faces bore the same Lawson bone structure. She opened the door just a crack as they approached the porch. "Thomas," she said, her voice steady but clipped. "Emma," he replied, climbing the steps with a manila folder tucked under his arm. "We need to talk." Inside, Emma motioned toward the dining table. "Come in. Let's not do this on the porch." Her heart was hammering, but she moved deliberately, pulling out chairs for them as though hosting an uncomfortable dinner. Lily, her 22-year-old daughter, emerged from the hallway, eyes wary. "Mom, what's going on?" "Just sit, sweetheart," Emma murmured. Thomas laid the folder on the table and opened it. "This property," he began, "should never have been purchased." Robert wasn't thinking clearly. His health, his finances. Emma cut him off, her palms flat on the table. "My husband was perfectly sound of mind, Thomas. He planned this place down to the last stone." The younger men shifted in their seats, exchanging uneasy glances. One cleared his throat as though to speak, then thought better of it. Emma reached for a blue folder she had prepared days ago, full of the legal documents Robert had left. She slid it across to Thomas. "Here. The deed, the medical evaluations, the notarized statements. Everything Robert arranged before he died." He hesitated, flipping through the papers. His confidence faltered. You had these ready?" "Yes," Emma said simply. Robert did. When Thomas's voice rose, Lily stepped closer to her mother, hand on her shoulder. "Mom?" Emma squeezed her daughter's fingers. "It's okay." Then, looking at Thomas, she added, "If you still doubt the legality, we can call the sheriff's office right now." And she did. Within the hour a local deputy arrived, polite but firm, examining the documents and confirming Emma's legal ownership. Thomas's shoulders sagged. Without another word, he closed his folder, nodded stiffly, and led his companions back to the SUV. Emma exhaled, feeling the tremor leave her hands. Lily hugged her from behind. "Mom, are you okay?" "I'm fine," Emma whispered, staring out the window as the SUV disappeared down the drive. "Your father prepared me for this." It wasn't just a legal win, it was a message from Robert that she wasn't alone. And in that moment, standing in the heart of Sierra Vista with her daughter, Emma realized this inheritance was far more than land or a house. It was a test of courage, love, and the values Robert had built into every beam and brick. The fight, she knew, had only just begun. The morning light spilled softly through the kitchen windows when Emma finally stirred. She had barely slept, her head full of Robert's videos and the confrontation with Thomas. The smell of pine and damp soil wafted in through the cracked window, mingling with the aroma of the coffee she brewed in Robert's old French press. Mug in hand, she wandered into the hallway, its wooden floorboards creaking gently under her slippers. "All right, Robert," she whispered to herself, "show me what you've been hiding." The house seemed to breathe around her. She started at the front foyer, a sunlit space lined with photographs from their travels, except many of these she had never seen before. Robert as a boy at Yosemite, Robert holding a fishing rod beside a lake she didn't recognize. She touched one frame lightly, a smile tugging at her lips and then fading. She moved next into the library. The scent of leather-bound books and polished oak filled the air. Floor-to-ceiling shelves were crammed with literature, history, and botany, her fields of interest. In the corner stood an antique reading chair draped with a familiar wool blanket from their old Berkeley apartment. Emma sank into it, closing her eyes for a moment. "You thought of everything," she murmured. Across the hall, she found a study with a wide desk facing a window. On it lay a fountain pen and a stack of lined paper, as though Robert had been writing just yesterday. Each room she entered felt like a carefully composed letter to her. But the most breathtaking discovery was at the back of the house. She opened a pair of French doors and stepped into a conservatory, a glass-walled sanctuary filled with orchids, lilies, and rare ferns. The air was warm and humid, carrying the earthy scent of moss. Sunlight fractured through the panes, illuminating rows of exotic orchids in bloom, some species she had only read about in journals. A gentle voice startled her. "Mrs. Lawson?" She turned to see a tall woman in her late 50s, dressed in gardening overalls, holding a spray bottle. "I'm Julia," she said with a kind smile. "Robert hired me to care for the plants." Emma blinked back tears. "You've been here, all this time?" Julia nodded. 5 years. He came up as often as he could. Very particular about the orchids. Always said they were for you. She gestured toward a rare ghost orchid in full bloom. "He even imported this one from Florida. Said it reminded him of your first research paper." Emma's hand flew to her mouth. She walked slowly between the rows of plants, fingertips brushing the blossoms. "He never told me any of this," she said softly. Julia placed a gentle hand on her arm. "He wanted it to be a surprise." Standing in the warm, fragrant conservatory, Emma felt an overwhelming wave of love and loss. Each plant, each carefully chosen detail, was another sentence in the silent story Robert had built for her. She realized Sierra Vista wasn't just a property. It was a living testament to his devotion, a homegrown museum of their shared life and his quiet sacrifices. Late in the afternoon, after hours of wandering through hallways and glass-walled conservatories, Emma returned to the living room and opened another of Robert's videos. The screen flickered to life. Robert was sitting at a desk she didn't recognize, a playful smile tugging at his lips. "Emma," he said, "there's one more place I need you to see. It's behind the paneling in the west hallway. Push on the second frame to the left." Her pulse quickened. She grabbed a flashlight from a kitchen drawer and walked down the west hallway, her fingers grazing the polished wood. She counted frames until she reached the second one. It was a landscape of Lake Tahoe at dusk. Taking a deep breath, she pressed on the frame. With a soft click, a hidden door swung open. Inside was a room bathed in gentle northern light filtering through a row of skylights. She stepped across the threshold and froze. It was a fully equipped art studio, wide work tables, easels, brushes sorted by size and ceramic jars, rows of paint tubes lined like soldiers. The scent of linseed oil and wood shavings hung in the air, achingly familiar. Emma's knees went weak. She set the flashlight down and wandered among the canvases stacked neatly against the wall. They weren't Robert's paintings. They were hers, old sketches and half-finished oils she had done years ago, back when she still had time to paint on weekends. "Oh my God," she whispered, pulling out a canvas she hadn't seen in 15 years. Each piece was labeled and wrapped in protective paper. She traced her signature on one and felt tears spill down her cheeks. "He kept them all," she said aloud, voice breaking. On an easel at the center of the room stood a self-portrait she had abandoned long ago. Pinned to the frame was a small envelope. Her hands shook as she opened it. In Robert's handwriting, "You're still here, Emma." She sank onto the stool, clutching the note. A sob escaped her, then a laugh. "You remembered," she whispered to the empty room. "You remembered who I was before everything else." Robert's voice from the video seemed to echo in her ears, "This is yours. Pick up where you left off." Emma wiped her face, looking around at the paints, the blank canvases, the jars of brushes waiting patiently. It wasn't just a studio. It was a map back to herself, a space Robert had built so she could reclaim the part of her she had tucked away while raising Lily, while teaching, while caring for him. The afternoon light shifted, spilling across the floor in long golden stripes. Emma rose slowly, touching the brushes, the paints, feeling a flutter of something she hadn't felt in years, possibility. In that hidden studio, surrounded by her own forgotten work and Robert's quiet devotion, she felt as though he had reached across time to place her hand back on a brush and say, "This is who you are." It was the most intimate gift he could have left her, not just a house, but a return to herself. The next weekend, Emma was in the conservatory repotting one of the ghost orchids when she heard a car door slam outside. She wiped her hands on a towel and walked to the front hall just as her daughter, Lily, breezed in, her hair pulled back in a neat bun and her phone clutched tightly in one hand. At 22, Lily had inherited Robert's calm eyes but not his cautious nature. "Mom," she said, setting her bag down. "I've been talking to Uncle Thomas. He and the others say we should meet about the house. They're offering to help manage it for us." Emma's stomach tightened. "Help manage," she repeated slowly. "Or take control." Lily frowned. "They didn't say it like that. They've been really nice. Uncle Thomas even showed me pictures of Dad when he was a kid. Said this place was too much for you alone." Emma walked to the window, staring at the winding driveway. Her hands trembled slightly as she spoke. "Lily, your father built Sierra Vista for us, not for them. They're not here out of kindness." Lily crossed her arms, defensive. "Maybe you're being too harsh. They're family." Julia, the gardener, appeared in the doorway, wiping dirt from her gloves. She glanced between mother and daughter before speaking. "Mrs. Lawson, Mr. Robert told me to tell you something if this day came. He suspected his brothers would try to get to Lily first. He said you'd understand what to do." Emma's heart sank and then steadied. "Thank you, Julia." She turned back to Lily, softening her voice. "Honey, listen to me. This isn't just about land or money. This house, these gardens, they're your father's love letter to us. If you let them in now, they'll take more than the property. They'll rewrite the story he left behind." Lily bit her lip, eyes darting to the orchids blooming under glass. I miss him. Talking to them made me feel close to him." Emma stepped forward and took her daughter's hands. "I know. I miss him too. But the closeness you're looking for isn't in their promises. It's here, in these rooms, in his videos, in the things he built for you." Julia nodded quietly. Mr. Robert used to stand in this very spot and talk about Lily finishing college, about you both painting together in the studio. He saw this as your safe place. Lily blinked rapidly, her shoulders slumping. I didn't know any of that. Emma pulled her into an embrace. That's why we have to be careful. This inheritance isn't just real estate. It's a trust, a memory, a message. And it's my job, our job, to protect it. Outside, another car door shut, echoing up the drive. Emma released Lily, straightening. They're here, she said quietly. It's time we face them together. In that moment, standing between her daughter and the door, Emma felt the weight of Robert's foresight and her own resolve harden. This wasn't just a legal battle anymore. It was a fight for their family's story. That evening, after the tension with Lily and the unexpected visit from the Lawsons, Emma sat at the long dining table, papers spread out in front of her like a battlefield map. Outside the windows, Sierra Vista glowed under a silver moon, its garden paths lit by small lanterns Robert had strung years ago. She could almost picture him leaning in the doorway, saying, "Plan the work the plan, Em." She whispered it aloud, "Plan the work," and drew a deep breath. Lily came in quietly, carrying 2 mugs of tea. "Here, Mom," she said, setting one down. "You've been at this all night." Emma smiled faintly. "Thanks, sweetheart. I just need to get our ducks in a row." She shuffled the blue folder Robert had left, the deeds, notarized statements, emails from surveyors. Every page was a piece of armor he'd crafted for her. Across the table lay a legal pad where she had scribbled possible scenarios, mediation, court, or selling. She stared at the word sell for a long time before crossing it out. "No," she murmured, "not yet." Lily sat across from her, fidgeting with the mug. "Uncle Thomas called me again. He says we're making a mistake not meeting with their lawyer. Maybe we should just talk." Emma put her pen down and met her daughter's eyes. "Lily, talking is one thing. Signing over control is another. Your father built this place for us. If we give it away without a fight, we lose more than property. We lose his story." Lily's shoulders softened. "You really think they'd take it?" "I don't think." "I know." Emma leaned back, exhaling. "But Robert didn't leave us defenseless. He left a plan." She rose and walked to the window, looking out at the conservatory where the orchids glowed pale under moonlight. "This house isn't just wood and stone," she said quietly. "It's him. His mind, his hands. Every room is proof he was thinking clearly, planning carefully. That's what will save us." Julia appeared in the doorway, wiping her hands on a towel. "Mrs. Lawson, if you need statements from me about Robert's visits and his instructions, I'm ready. He told me to stand by you." Emma turned, touched. "Thank you, Julia. We may need that." She went back to the table, gathering the papers into neat stacks. "Here's what we'll do," she said, her voice firm now. "We document everything. We don't rush into meetings. We keep our evidence ready and our story straight. They'll try to pressure us, but we hold." Lily nodded slowly, watching her mother transform from grieving widow into strategist. "You sound like Dad," she said softly. Emma gave a small, sad smile. "Maybe I've finally learned from him." As the clock ticked past midnight, Emma felt a steadiness settle in her chest. The fight ahead would be long, but she wasn't walking into it blind. Sierra Vista wasn't just an inheritance anymore, it was a testament to Robert's foresight, and now to her own courage. Julia led Emma down a narrow set of stairs at the far end of the kitchen. The wooden steps creaked under their feet, the air growing cooler and faintly metallic. Emma clutched the railing, her heart thudding. She had never been down here before. At the bottom, Julia flicked on a switch. Warm yellow light filled a basement room that looked nothing like a storage space. Against one wall stood filing cabinets and a steel safe, In the center, a large oak table was covered with neatly arranged maps, folders, and binders. On a pegboard hung rolls of blueprints and surveying equipment. It was as if Robert had transplanted a war room into their home. Emma stepped closer, fingers brushing a map pinned under a paperweight shaped like a pine cone. The map showed the Sierra Heights Resort project, but not as she'd seen it in glossy brochures. This one had red and blue markings, shaded areas extending beyond the advertised boundaries. She bent down, eyes narrowing. "This isn't what they showed at the town meeting," she murmured. Julia nodded grimly. Robert knew they weren't telling the whole story. He hired 3 independent appraisers. They all found that the second phase of the project includes a golf course and access roads cutting across the land next to Sierra Vista. Emma straightened, a chill running through her. She pictured the manicured greens of a golf course replacing the untouched forest beyond their fence. "He saw this coming," she said softly. Julia opened a drawer and pulled out a slim binder. He documented everything. Emails between developers and the Lawsons, bank transfers, statements from ex-employees. He called it your shield. Emma flipped through the binder, her fingers trembling. There were screenshots, signed affidavits, even old photographs of survey stakes in the woods. The scope of Robert's preparations stunned her. "He was sick," she whispered, "but he still did all this." "He said he didn't want you blindsided," Julia said gently. "He knew they would go after Lily first. He told me to remind you of that when the time came." Emma closed the binder, pressing it to her chest. A mix of sorrow and admiration washed over her. "He knew them better than I did," she said. "He knew this wasn't just a property dispute. It was a siege." She walked slowly around the table, taking in each detail, the annotated maps, the color-coded folders, the careful handwriting on sticky notes. It was Robert's mind laid bare, his foresight turned into paper and ink. Looking back at Julia, Emma drew a steadying breath. "Then we'll use what he left. We'll fight them on his terms." Julia's eyes softened. "He'd be proud of you." Emma turned to the map again, tracing the outline of Sierra Vista with her fingertip. In that dim, quiet basement, she felt both the weight of the coming battle and the strength Robert had left her. This was no longer just a house. It was a fortress built of love, foresight, and truth, and she would defend it. The sun had barely risen over the Sierra Nevada when Emma's phone buzzed with a message from her daughter. "Mom, Uncle Thomas called. He wants to meet and talk about Dad's property. He says it's for my future." Emma sat at the kitchen island of Sierra Vista, staring at the text. Her stomach tightened. She could almost hear Robert's voice in her head. "They'll go after Lily first." Lily was only 22, still in college in San Diego, and had driven up to the mountains the night before after another call from Thomas. When she walked into the conservatory that morning, her hair still damp from a quick shower, she looked like a younger version of Emma, curious, bright-eyed, but visibly conflicted. "Mom, they're not bad people," Lily said, perching on the edge of a wicker chair near the orchids. "Uncle Thomas told me Dad wanted all of us to share Sierra Vista. He said the lawyers mess things up." Emma set down her mug of coffee and took a deep breath. "Lily, listen to me," she said softly but firmly. "Your father loved you more than anything, but his brothers, they don't see this place the way you do. They see dollar signs. You need to be careful." Julia, who had been misting a row of rare Cattleya orchids nearby, turned, her brow furrowed. "Emma's right," she said quietly. "Grief makes people vulnerable. They know you're hurting. They'll promise you security, family unity, anything to win you over." Lily folded her arms. "But Uncle Thomas said Dad was confused when he bought this property. He said it's not fair for you to keep it all." Emma's heart twisted. She reached for a framed photo on the windowsill, Robert at 25, holding a small Cattleya orchid in a chipped pot. His smile in that photo was boyish, hopeful. "Do you know this flower, Lily?" Emma asked. Lily leaned closer. It's beautiful. I've never seen that picture. Your father told me once this orchid was the only thing he kept from his childhood here. His brothers smashed the pot when they were teenagers. He spent years trying to find one like it again, Emma said, her voice breaking. The studio, the conservatory, they're not just gifts. They're his way of taking back what was stolen from him. Lily's expression softened, confusion flickering into doubt. She glanced from her mother to Julia, then back at the orchids glowing in the morning light. Emma moved closer, placing her hands gently on Lily's shoulders. I'm not asking you to hate them. I'm asking you to pause. Don't sign anything. Don't agree to anything until you know the full story. In the quiet of that glass room, surrounded by Robert's painstakingly restored memories, Emma felt a plan harden inside her. She still had the laptop upstairs, hundreds of Robert's videos, and now a daughter at a crossroads. This was no longer just about a house. It was about protecting Robert's legacy and protecting Lily from becoming another casualty of the Lawson brothers' greed. By late afternoon, the sky over Sierra Vista had turned to muted gold. Emma sat in the upstairs study, laptop open, headphones over her ears. Robert's videos played one after another, his steady voice filling the quiet house. Each clip was like receiving a message across time, tips about property lines, screenshots of legal documents, names of key people in the Sierra Heights project. She scribbled notes furiously in a leather-bound notebook. Downstairs, Julia brewed tea and printed out maps from the strategy room. When she came up carrying a stack of papers, Emma had paused a video of Robert explaining the zoning loopholes. He thought of everything, Emma murmured, rubbing her temples. Julia set the papers on the desk. He did, she said. But he also knew you'd need allies. This isn't just paperwork, Emma. It's a plan. Emma looked at her friend, eyes tired but determined. Then we'll follow it. She flipped to a clean page and began drawing columns, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. We list what we know about Thomas and the others. We use the golf course plans as leverage. Julia smiled faintly. Robert would be proud. That evening, she called Lily into the conservatory. The girl had been scrolling on her phone, tension written across her face. Emma reached for her hand. Honey, I need you to listen carefully, she began. Your father didn't leave us this house by chance. He left it because he wanted us to stand together. They'll try to divide us, but we can't let that happen. Lily hesitated, then nodded. I saw some of Dad's videos, she whispered. He talked about the golf project. He even mentioned Thomas by name. Why didn't he tell us sooner? Emma squeezed her daughter's hand. Because he didn't want to burden you while he was sick. But now we have to act. They spread the maps across the conservatory table, the orchids casting soft shadows on the paper. Emma pointed to a shaded section overlapping Sierra Vista's boundary. This is the part they don't want the public to see. If we reveal it to the right people, it becomes our strongest card. Lily traced the line with her fingertip, eyes narrowing. So we're going to confront them? Yes, Emma said. But not recklessly. First we meet with our lawyer. Then, if necessary, we go to the county and the press. And we'll request a meeting with the CEO of Sierra Heights to show them what we know. That puts us in control. Julia leaned on the back of a chair. It won't be easy. They'll push back. Emma straightened, gathering the papers into a folder. I'm not afraid of a fight, she said quietly. Not for Robert. Not for you, Lily. The three women stood in the fading light, surrounded by maps, orchids, and Robert's careful handwriting. For the first time since his death, Emma felt not just grief but resolve. The plan was no longer just Robert's. It was theirs, and it was ready. The rain had just stopped in Sacramento when Emma parked her car outside a small coffee shop tucked between an old bookstore and a laundromat. She had chosen this place carefully, no crowds, no chance of running into the Lawsons. Through the window she spotted Lily sitting at a corner table, nursing a latte and scrolling on her phone. Her daughter looked both older and younger than her 22 years, shoulders squared like a grown woman, but eyes darting nervously like a child waiting for an answer. Emma took a deep breath, adjusted her scarf, and walked in. The smell of roasted beans and cinnamon rolls greeted her. She ordered tea at the counter, then slid into the seat across from Lily. Lily didn't look up right away. "I met Marcus yesterday," she said flatly, still staring at her phone. "He says you're exaggerating. He says Dad would have wanted the family to work together." Emma folded her hands on the table. "Sweetheart," she said gently, "they're giving you their version of the story. But your father left us his version too. You deserve to hear both before you decide anything." Lily sighed, finally meeting her mother's eyes. "I'm so tired of all the fighting. Marcus said they could set up a trust fund for me if I signed some papers." It sounded safe. Emma reached into her bag and pulled out a tablet, sliding it across the table. "Your father made a video just for you," she said softly. "Watch it. Right here. Right now." Lily hesitated, then tapped play. Robert's face filled the screen, smiling but thinner than she remembered. "Hi, Lil," he began, his voice warm and steady. "If you're watching this, it means I'm gone. I need you to know something." Emma watched her daughter's expression shift as Robert explained why he'd kept his heart condition secret, so their last years together wouldn't be overshadowed by hospitals. He spoke about the Sierra Vista project, how he'd uncovered the hidden golf course plan, and how he feared his brothers would pressure her. "Don't let them steal what belongs to you and your mom," he said at the end. "Stay together. Trust Emma. I built all this for you both." By the time the video ended, Lily's eyes were brimming with tears. She set the tablet down carefully. "He knew everything," she whispered. "He knew they'd try to use me." Emma reached across the table and took her hands. "Yes," she said, her voice firm but tender. "And he gave us everything we need to stand up to them. But we have to do it together." Lily squeezed her mother's fingers, a new steadiness in her face. "Then let's do it. No more meetings with Marcus alone. No more trust fund talks without a lawyer." Outside, the wet pavement glistened under a pale sun. Inside, in the quiet corner of a Sacramento coffee shop, mother and daughter sealed an unspoken pact. For the first time, Emma felt the full weight of Robert's plan shift from her shoulders to theirs together. This wasn't just her fight anymore. It was theirs, and they were ready. On a bright Monday morning in downtown Sacramento, Emma and Lily pushed open the heavy glass door of Bennett and Associates, a modest but respected law firm on J Street. The polished wooden floors creaked softly under their shoes as they walked toward a conference room lined with shelves of legal texts and framed diplomas. The scent of fresh coffee mingled with the faint tang of copier ink. This was not just another appointment, it felt like a turning point. Mr. Bennett, a silver-haired attorney in his late 50s, rose from behind a mahogany table and shook their hands warmly. "Emma, Lily, I'm glad you came. Let's get started," he said, gesturing to two chairs across from him. He had already laid out several thick folders, color-coded tabs sticking out like flags. Emma set down her leather bag and exhaled. "Thank you for seeing us on such short notice. We need to make sure Sierra Vista stays protected. Robert left us everything we need, but we have to use it wisely." Lily perched on the edge of her chair, fingers tapping nervously on the table. "I just don't want to mess this up," she murmured. "Marcus keeps calling. He says I'm being selfish." Mr. Bennett opened a folder and slid a map toward them, the same detailed map Robert had kept in his strategy room. "This," he said, tapping a section shaded in green, "is where the proposed golf course overlaps with the neighboring land. Your father documented everything. We'll use it to show the board of Sierra Heights that the Lawsons' plan isn't what they've told the public." Emma leaned over the map, tracing the lines with her finger. Robert always said information was power, she whispered. She turned to Lily. See? He's still protecting us. We just have to follow through. For the next 2 hours they pored over Robert's videos, emails, and financial records. Mr. Bennett explained how each piece fit into a legal strategy, injunctions, disclosure requests, and public pressure. He took careful notes on Lily's recollection of Marcus's promises. Their approach is classic, he said. Divide and conquer. We're going to do the opposite. Mother and daughter united. That's our strength. As the morning wore on, Lily began to sit straighter, her nervousness giving way to resolve. Dad really thought of everything, she said quietly. I can't believe he even anticipated how they'd try to manipulate me. Emma reached over and squeezed her daughter's hand. We're in this together, she said. No more fear. They scheduled meetings with the CEO and legal counsel of Sierra Heights for the following week, planning to confront the executives armed with Robert's evidence. Before leaving, Mr. Bennett handed them a slim flash drive. This contains the key documents and videos in one secure file. Review them tonight. Know them by heart. Stepping back out into the California sunlight, Emma and Lily felt the weight of the folders in their arms and the weight of something else, a shared mission. For the first time since Robert's death, Emma sensed that the pieces of his plan were falling into place. Beside her, Lily looked determined, almost fierce. They walked to the car in silence, but the silence was no longer heavy with fear, it hummed with quiet purpose. 3 days later, a cold breeze swept across the pine trees of Sierra Vista as 3 black SUVs wound their way up the gravel driveway. Emma stood by the tall windows of the great room, watching them approach. She smoothed the lapel of her navy business suit, a suit she hadn't worn since Robert's memorial service, and inhaled deeply. Beside her, Lily adjusted her blazer and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Mother and daughter looked like a united front. They're here, Lily whispered. Her voice was steady, but Emma caught the tremor in her hands. I know, Emma replied, placing a hand briefly on her daughter's shoulder. Remember, we prepared for this. We're not victims here. We're owners. The doorbell echoed through the house. Emma opened the door slowly to face Thomas Lawson and his 2 brothers, Marcus and Stephen. All 3 wore dark suits and the smug expressions of men used to winning. Behind them, a younger man in glasses clutched a leather briefcase, their financial consultant. Emma, Thomas said curtly. We're here to discuss the property. It's time to be reasonable. Please, come in, Emma said evenly. We'll talk inside. She led them to the formal dining room, where sunlight streamed across the long oak table. At one end sat neatly stacked folders, a pitcher of water, and a laptop connected to a large flat-screen monitor on the wall. The room smelled faintly of polished wood and fresh lilies from the conservatory, a detail Emma had chosen deliberately to remind them whose home they were in. As the Lawsons took their seats, the consultant began unpacking spreadsheets. Emma stood at the head of the table, Lily at her right, and with one tap of the keyboard, a full-color map filled the screen, 30 acres of Sierra Vista and the surrounding development zones. Marcus leaned forward, frowning. Where did you get this? He demanded. Emma met his eyes calmly. From Robert, she said. He documented everything, the golf course plan, the hidden parcels, the valuation manipulations. We know exactly what Sierra Heights is worth with and without this property. The brothers exchanged uneasy glances. For the first time, their confidence cracked. At that moment, another figure entered, Mr. Chin, the CEO of Sierra Heights, invited by Mr. Bennett. I wanted to see this myself, he said, extending a hand to Emma. Your husband's notes were illuminating. The consultant's face went pale. Thomas's jaw tightened. This isn't how we planned to. Emma cut him off. No, it isn't. This is how I planned it. We're not selling under pressure. We're not ceding control. You can either step back or we'll make your dealings public. silence fell. Only the ticking of the grandfather clock filled the room. Lily straightened in her chair, eyes blazing. "We're done being manipulated," she said softly but firmly. Emma glanced at her daughter, feeling Robert's presence like a steady hand at her back. For the first time, she sensed the balance of power shift. The confrontation was far from over, but from the very first moment, she had kept control, and she wasn't about to let it go. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the wide windows of the Sierra Vista dining room, glinting off the piles of folders Emma had stacked neatly on the long oak table. Her hands trembled only slightly as she arranged the exhibits one last time. Lily moved quietly around the room, setting out glasses of water and straightening chairs. "Are you sure about this, Mom?" she asked. Emma nodded, smoothing the cover of a thick binder marked Evidence. "This is what your father wanted," she said softly. "Today we show them we're not afraid." At 10 sharp, Thomas, Marcus and Stephen Lawson filed in with their consultant, the air between them tense and crackling. Mr. Bennett stood ready at the corner, his expression calm but alert. Mr. Chen from Sierra Heights arrived moments later, a slim briefcase in hand. Emma rose from her chair, the weight of Robert's careful planning steadying her nerves. "Gentlemen," she began, her voice firm but measured, "thank you for coming. I believe it's time we look at the facts." One by one she opened the binders, sliding color-coded documents across the table, bank statements, signed contracts, zoning maps, and emails, all culled from Robert's strategy room. Photocopies of property deeds bore Robert's signature in bold blue ink. She tapped a page with her index finger. "This," she said, "is the record of the purchase, notarized and filed. This," she flipped to another page, "shows your company's internal memo about the golf course extension. You told the county something different." Marcus's face went pale. Stephen shifted in his seat, suddenly fascinated by his pen. Thomas tried to interject, but Mr. Bennett held up a hand. "Let her finish," he said evenly. Mr. Chen adjusted his glasses and cleared his throat. "I've reviewed these materials," he said, glancing at the Lawsons. "And frankly, they corroborate Mrs. Lawson's claim. Our board was unaware of some of these irregularities." Emma felt a wave of heat rush through her chest, relief, vindication, and grief all at once. She straightened her shoulders. "Here are my conditions," she said. "You will withdraw any legal challenge to Sierra Vista. You will not approach my daughter again without counsel present. And you will respect the boundaries Robert established in his will." For a long moment no one spoke. Only the grandfather clock ticked steadily in the background. Finally Thomas exhaled and looked down at his hands. "We don't have a choice," he muttered. "That's right," Emma said softly but firmly. "You don't." The consultant began gathering his papers. Marcus rose abruptly and walked to the window, staring out at the rolling green hills Robert had fought to preserve. "He always was 10 steps ahead," he said bitterly. Emma closed the binder and clasped it to her chest. She could almost hear Robert's voice in her ear, "Information is power, Em." Lily reached for her hand under the table and squeezed. In that moment Emma knew the tide had turned. Sierra Vista was secure, not by chance but by Robert's foresight and her own courage. As the Lawsons filed out, heads bowed, she felt the house breathe easier around her, as though its true owners had finally claimed it. The days after the confrontation unfolded like a slow exhale. Sierra Vista, once filled with tension and legal documents, began to feel like a home again. Early each morning, sunlight streamed through the tall windows, spilling across the hardwood floors of the great room. The scent of pine drifted in from the surrounding forest. Emma would stand at the kitchen counter with a mug of coffee, staring out at the mist lifting from the valley below, and think, "We made it." One Tuesday, she walked into the studio Robert had built for her, a space she had barely touched since arriving. Dust motes danced in the shafts of light coming through the skylights. Brushes stood neatly in jars, canvases lined the walls, and the easel sat waiting as though it had known she would return. Emma ran her fingers over a palette of dried paint, remembering the nights she and Robert had spent talking about art before his illness. I don't even know where to start, she murmured aloud. From the doorway, Lily answered, start anywhere. Dad would love to see you painting again. Emma turned and smiled at her daughter. Lily had been spending her days cataloging the records Robert left behind, learning about property law and environmental protections. She was still grieving, but there was a steadiness in her now, a quiet confidence. Together they moved between the studio and the conservatory, tending orchids and rearranging books. That afternoon Emma unrolled a blank canvas and dipped her brush into a vivid blue. The bristles trembled slightly in her hand. With the first stroke, she felt a surge of something she hadn't felt in years, a mixture of freedom and purpose. It's like breathing again, she told Lily. Lily pulled up a stool. Teach me, she said softly. Teach me what you used to do. They painted side by side, Emma explaining color mixing and brush techniques, Lily laughing at her own mistakes. In the evenings they cooked simple meals, pasta, salads, sometimes just toast and tea, and talked about Robert, about what Sierra Vista could become. Emma began sketching plans in a notebook, an artist-in-residence program, a community garden, a conservation fund in Robert's name. His legacy isn't just this house, she said one night, closing the notebook. It's what we do with it. Every room she entered seemed to whisper a memory, Robert's handwriting on a label, his favorite chair by the window, the smell of the cedar chest in the hall. But instead of pain, those memories now brought a quiet strength. She realized that Sierra Vista had stopped being just a battlefield, it was a living canvas of love, foresight, and resilience. As the sun dipped behind the mountains, Emma stood on the porch with Lily, the air cool and sweet. We're not just surviving anymore, she said, slipping an arm around her daughter's shoulders. We're building something. Lily leaned her head against her mother's. And Dad's still here, she whispered. In that moment Emma felt it too, Robert's presence, not as a shadow of loss but as a thread of light woven through their new lives. The house, the studio, the conservatory, all of it was more than property. It was the stage for their rebirth. Late one quiet afternoon, Emma stood barefoot in the studio Robert had built, a faint smell of turpentine and pine needles filling the air. The huge canvas before her was almost complete, months of work layered in oils and glazes. She had poured into it fragments of the past and hopes for the future, the misty outline of the Sierra Mountains at dawn, the conservatory filled with orchids, a winding path that led to an open door. In the center she painted 3 figures, herself, Lily, and Robert, their hands not clasped but reaching toward one another, a silent thread of connection. Lily walked in carrying 2 mugs of chamomile tea. She stopped, her eyes widening. Mom, it's beautiful. It looks like home. Emma set her brush down, wiping her hands on an old apron spattered with color. It is home, she said softly. It's everything we've been through. Every secret your father left us, every choice we've made since. They stood together in front of the canvas. Lily traced the air above the painted figures with one finger. You put Dad right here, she whispered. Not as a ghost, but like he's guiding us. Emma nodded. That's exactly what I wanted. Her voice caught a little. He always said Sierra Vista wasn't just property, it was potential. When the painting dried, they hung it in the great room above the stone fireplace, the same room where the Lawsons had once tried to intimidate them. The late afternoon sun caught the colors, making the scene glow like stained glass. Friends who visited later would pause and fall silent before it. But for Emma and Lily, the painting was more than decoration, it was a declaration. It reminded them daily that their inheritance was not only land and money but the chance to create something meaningful. Over breakfast at the big wooden table, they began sketching plans for Sierra Vista's future, a retreat for artists, environmental education workshops, a scholarship fund in Robert's name. I want kids from Sacramento to come up here and learn about these mountains, Lily said one morning, flipping through her notebook. Dad would have loved that. Emma smiled over her coffee. And I want artists to find what I found again, a place to breathe, to start over. We'll make it sustainable, not just beautiful. Every decision they made, whether about property lines, conservation easements, or studio renovations, was weighed against that vision. They walked the land together at sunset, taking notes on where to plant new trees, which trails to restore, how to protect the creek from runoff. Sometimes, when Emma painted alone late at night, she'd hear the wind through the pines and imagine Robert's voice, "Keep going, Em. You're doing it." And she would smile, feeling less like a widow and more like a partner in an ongoing work of art. Sierra Vista was no longer a secret or a battlefield. It had become a living legacy, a home, a workshop, and a beacon for the values Robert had cherished. And in shaping it, Emma and Lily were shaping themselves. A soft autumn light bathed Sierra Vista the morning Marcus arrived. The drive up the mountain was lined with maples turning red and gold, and the air carried the crisp smell of pine needles. Emma saw his car from the kitchen window, an old silver sedan, not the sleek SUV he had brought on previous visits. She felt her heart tighten but didn't turn away. Lily, standing at the counter pouring coffee, glanced at her. "Are you ready for this?" Emma exhaled slowly. "I think so. It's time." When Marcus stepped out, he looked older than she remembered, his shoulders slumped, his face thinner. He clutched his coat around him as if bracing against the mountain wind. "Emma," he began quietly, "thank you for letting me come. I'm sorry. For all of it." She opened the door and nodded. "Come in, Marcus. We can talk inside." The three of them gathered in the conservatory, where shafts of sunlight fell across rows of orchids Robert had loved. Lily stood beside a pot of pale catalias, her arms crossed but her expression softer than before. Marcus's eyes roamed the room. "I haven't been in here since Robert showed me the first sketches," he murmured. "He really made it happen." Emma handed him a cup of tea. "He did. And now we're trying to honor that." They walked through the studio next. Paints and canvases lay spread out from Emma's latest work. Marcus stopped in front of the large family painting over the fireplace. He tilted his head. "That's me, isn't it? In the background?" Emma smiled faintly. "It's all of us. Past and present." Robert wanted connection, not division. Marcus set the cup down, his hands trembling. "I've been sick," he admitted. "Heart trouble. Seeing what Robert built here, what you two have done, it made me realize how wrong I was." His voice cracked. "I don't want to fight anymore." Lily stepped closer, her tone gentler than Emma expected. "We don't either. But you can't undo what you tried to do. You can only do better now." Marcus nodded, tears welling. "I want to try." Later that afternoon they sat together on the porch, looking out over the valley. Emma brought out Robert's final video, one she had saved for this moment. On the screen Robert's face appeared, smiling, eyes bright. "If you're watching this," he said, "then you've all found your way back to Sierra Vista. Remember, a legacy isn't land or money. It's living fully, forgiving, creating." When the video ended, no one spoke for a long time. The wind moved through the pines like a whisper. Emma felt something ease in her chest, not forgetting, but releasing. Sierra Vista no longer felt like a fortress or a secret. It had become a shared space for growth, a true home. Emma and Lily were already sketching plans for workshops, conservation programs, and an annual memorial event in Robert's name. Marcus, humbled, offered to help fund the scholarship for local students. Standing before the big painting in the great room that evening, Emma felt Robert's presence not as a ghost but as a quiet guide. "We're ready for the next chapter," she whispered. Lily squeezed her hand. Outside, the sun dipped behind the mountains, and Sierra Vista glowed with possibility, a living testament to love, forgiveness, and the courage to begin again. That evening, as the mountain air turned cool and a soft mist curled around the pines, Emma, Lily, and Marcus lingered in the great room. The fireplace crackled gently, casting golden light across the large family painting. Outside, the conservatory glowed like a lantern, filled with the orchids Robert had once tended so carefully. The house felt different now, not a battleground, not a secret, but a living space breathing with forgiveness and possibility. Emma poured tea for Marcus and Lily, her hands steady for the first time in months. "We've come a long way," she said quietly. Lily leaned against her shoulder, nodding. Marcus gazed at the flames, eyes glistening. "Robert would be proud," he murmured. "Not of me before, but of this moment. Of what you've done." They rose together and walked one last time through the studio, the conservatory, and the strategy room, now transformed into a planning space for scholarships and conservation efforts. Emma felt Robert's presence not as a weight but as a guiding hand, as if every choice he had made was leading them here. Lily slipped her arm through her mother's. "We're going to be okay, aren't we?" she asked softly. Emma smiled. "We already are." Standing at the porch as dusk deepened, the three of them watched the valley below. The wind carried the scent of pine and wildflowers. In that stillness, Emma realized that Sierra Vista had never been just about land or legacy. It was about courage, creativity, and connection, about facing grief and turning it into something life-giving. This story is not only theirs but a reflection of what many families experience: loss, conflict, healing, and the slow work of rebuilding trust. It's a reminder that inheritance is more than property. It's the values we live, the dreams we nurture, and the relationships we choose to mend. If this journey moved you, please like this video, share it with friends who might need hope, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next story. Leave a comment saying "I'm listening" to let us know you're part of this conversation and this community. Together, we can keep telling stories that inspire resilience, forgiveness, and new beginnings. See you in the next video.